The Life and Times of Theodore Addison, 5th Grade Challenge, by Jamaal. Monday, Part 1. The air was electric at school Monday morning. The big day had finally arrived. The 5th Grade Challenge was set to begin, and it would start with a bang. Right out of the gate, the front runner could be set today, because the final score of the Academic Day Challenge would be multiplied by 5, since all 5 classrooms were competing in that one competition. If one side dominated the other, they could put it out of reach. In Ted's classroom, James and Amber were both cramming as much as they could before it was time to compete. Beyond that, they had only given each other a passing wave when they came in. James didn't know if trusting her was a wise move, so he kept his distance. Also, he didn't want people thinking they were a pair when nothing was official anyway. Just a friendly wave to the girl who was supposedly in love with him. He yearned to embrace her affection. That is, if she could be trusted. And she continued to wear the clothes she wore Saturday. If he hadn't noticed her beauty before, he did now. Meanwhile, Amber didn't want to push her luck, especially since she ran out on him so suddenly. She wished she could have ended their lunch date with a better goodbye. And she hoped he liked her outfit. She wore it just for him. His friendly wave was encouraging, so maybe all wasn't lost. Still, even with their budding relationship, they didn't want to let their teammates down. Alas, they had to keep their edge. And their distance. Veronica studied too, but more so flipped through a few notes to shore up what she had studied. She would hate to have studied something and misremembered it at the most crucial time. In the back of her mind, though, she was worried that her gambit with Bookworm and James might have failed. They didn't look as though they had any real connection, just a friendly wave to each other. And Bookworm never returned her call. Maybe she didn't go through with it. That said, she was wearing an entirely different outfit, sunny and bright, as if she was looking for attention. If it wasn't because of James, was it because of the competition? Veronica couldn't figure it out. It was too late to talk about it with her, and they wouldn't have any other opportunities to coordinate. Veronica was flying blind. On top of that, if she was being honest with herself, she was afraid Ted would demolish her. He wasn't even trying to study. He was just twirling his pencil in his finger, staring at nothing in particular. She worried he was in the zone, ready for whatever the teachers could throw at him. This spurred Veronica to scramble through her books to be sure she knew every concept they learned that year. As for Ted, he continued twirling that pencil, staring into space. He still felt a twinge of guilt for how he treated Veronica. Well, not so much for how he treated her, per se, but more so that he mistreated anyone, because certainly she, of all people, didn't deserve his sympathies. Would God mistreat the devil? He wondered. No, but he would judge the devil according to his deeds. Well, maybe Veronica's not as bad as the devil, but still. He stole a few glances across the room at her, wishing he'd gotten off on a better foot with her. Then he started kicking himself. He had developed a soft spot for her, which he had warned his friends against. If this was her ploy, he fell for it, and now was almost certain not to bring his full strength to the contest. All right, everyone, it's time to begin the 5th Grade Challenge, Academics Day. Line up and let's head for the auditorium, Mr. Gibson announced. 15 minutes later, everyone in the 5th grade was seated, along with a few parents who came to watch their children compete. The contestants were on stage, sitting at long tables, with 10 boys on the left side of the stage and 10 girls on the right. The first contest for the Academics Day Challenge was math speed drills. As the teachers passed out the sheets with the problems in randomized order to prevent cheating, James was so nervous that he dropped his pencil off the table and had to go retrieve it as the audience laughed. When he picked up the pencil and stood back up, the bright lights shined in his face, and it hit him that he was the center of attention and that about 150 students were laughing at him. Seeing his friend wilt under the ridicule, Ted likewise flipped his pencil off the table and got up to go get it. The other boys did the same. The audience's laughter was uproarious as the 10 boys playfully bumped into each other as they pretended to struggle to pick up their pencils. One boy even slipped on his pencil and fell flat on his butt. Even the girl contestants couldn't help but laugh at the stunt. The teachers, though, were not as amused and scolded the boys to get back in their seats and stop playing around. The boys took their seats, none more eagerly than James. The house lights dimmed, leaving just the stage lights as the speed drill began. The audience went dead silent as the contestants rushed to finish 100 simple problems in 60 seconds. And just as soon as it began, it was over. The timer sounded, and everyone had to immediately drop their pencils as the teachers quickly whisked by and grabbed the papers. As they sat at the side desk, the teachers announced the results of each student as they finished grading their papers. Theodore Addison, 100%, one teacher announced, prompting Ted to pump his fist. Veronica Teal, 100%, another called out immediately after, prompting the girls in the audience to cheer. Veronica nullified Ted. They had a chance. Elijah Williams, 94%. The air went out of the boys' section of the audience. Ambrosa Rodriguez, 95%. This time, the girls gasped, waiting for the next result. Timothy Zhang, 95%. Riley Pavlovich, 97%. James Asefa, 94%. Every result evoked a reaction from the crowd, and the tension built up as the students in the audience calculated the scores of the two sides until they realized they were evenly matched, and the final two results would determine the winner. Isaac Benoit, 98%, one teacher called out for the final boy. The boys were on the edge of their seats, waiting for the final girl's result. Unless the final girl got a perfect score, the boys would win. Olivia Park, 100%, another teacher called out. The girls on the stage and in the audience sprung out of their seats, realizing instantly that they had won the first round. James hung his head, knowing his mistake cost his team the round. He remembered one of his mistakes, but he didn't have time to stop and fix it. When the buzzer sounded, he forgot where it was on the paper. Before James could dwell too long on his mistakes, as undoubtedly all the boys did, the teachers wheeled out a giant tic-tac-toe board from backstage. The Family Feud theme song played over the speakers, making the audience laugh. It didn't help that the host, Mr. Gibson, was a bald black man like Steve Harvey. The next section of the contest is trivia, Mr. Gibson announced. To win this round, you need to pick a square, which will reveal the question. If your answer is wrong, the other team will get a chance to answer and steal that spot. If no one gets it right, that square's question will be replaced next turn. Now, which team will start us off? Theodore and Olivia step forward for rock, paper, scissors. Ted and the girl from another classroom came to the center of the stage in front of the teacher, to Veronica's chagrin. She knew his rock, paper, scissors pattern well enough that she could have guessed which he'd go with first. Paper. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot! They said in unison as Ted and Olivia both showed paper. They went again, both going with paper again, then scissors, then paper. The audience started to chuckle as the two tried once again to break their tie. Finally, Olivia came out ahead, so the girls would get the first crack at the board. Veronica was relieved. After huddling to discuss their strategy, the girls selected the top left square, since they would have 3 ways to win, if they got their first question right. Square A1 question. In grammar, A, an, and the are examples of which part of speech? Amber raised her hand to answer and said, articles, which was the right answer. The square turned red for the girls' team. It was a layup for her. For the boys, they wanted to blunt the girls' progress before they could get too far, but also wanted to do more than play defense. They chose the opposing corner, the bottom right square. Square C3 question in geography. List the continents in order from largest to smallest. Bryson raised his hand along with Ted, but waved him off, saying, "I got this. It's easy." Ted pulled his hand down, hoping his friend was right, and Bryson said, "Asia, Antarctica, North America, Africa, South America, Europe, Australia." "Incorrect," Mr. Gibson said, deflating the boys' section of the audience. "The girls have a chance to steal the square." Veronica lunged at the microphone in the middle of her table and rattled off the list. Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, Australia. "That is correct. Girls steal the square." Some of the girls jumped out of their seats to cheer as they were one middle square away from taking the round and clinching their win for the day. The next turn was the girls' turn, so they naturally selected the center square, which would complete their line. Square B2 question. In memory, there are 2 apple pickers. One man is paid $10 an hour to pick apples, while the other is paid $15 an hour. The first man picks 200 apples an hour, while the other picks 300 an hour. How many times did I say apple? What? The contestants were floored as they were scribbling math on their papers. They must have missed the part where Mr. Gibson said, "In memory." After the girls recited the story in their minds, one girl reached for the microphone and guessed 5. Incorrect. The boys have a chance to steal the square. 3? Ted guessed. Correct. Boys steal the square, Mr. Gibson announced. To the joy and relief of the boys section, the next question was theirs also. This could be the turning point of the game. Knowing this, Ted took over. Without consulting his team, he selected the bottom left square. Square C1 question. In zoology, which jellyfish is ranked as the most venomous? James thought he knew. He pictured a jellyfish the size of a fingernail from off the coast of Australia, but he only knew the name in Amharic, not English, and he couldn't use his phone to translate the word. He raised his hand and said into the microphone, "I know the answer, but not in English. May I give you the Amharic word?" Judges, what do you think? Mr. Gibson asked. They gave him a nod, and the teacher took out his phone to let James say the word in Amharic. Before the translation even went through, Mr. Gibson recognized the word. When the translated word said Irokanji, Mr. Gibson said, "Incorrect. The girls have a chance to steal the square." The boys were deflated again as the girls huddled together, and Amber answered, "The box jellyfish?" Correct. Girls steal the square. Again, the girls' section erupted into applause and cheers, sensing victory in their next move. The contestants at the table likewise patted Amber on her back. This was the first time she had been the center of attention, but she felt incredibly shy. The girls had 2 options to win, and it was their turn. All they had to do was get the question right. With that, they chose the middle left square. Square B1 question. In spelling, Bob and Angie have 7 children. Mike is 17. Archie is 2 years older than Mike. Jenny is 4 years younger than Mike. Martin is the youngest at 3. Emily is 4 years older than Martin. Ashley is 4 years older than Emily. Johnny is Jenny's twin. What
is the alphabetized order of the family's names.
Another trick question, everyone realized. Many of the contestants had been scribbling math on their papers again, not catching that this was a spelling problem. But Veronica wasn't fooled, nor was Ted, as he licked his chops for one of the girls to mess up. After signaling that she knew the real answer, Veronica grabbed the mic. Archie, Ashley, Emily, Jenny, Johnny, Martin, Mike. She said, confident that she won the round for the girls.
Incorrect. Boys can steal the square.
Ted pumped his fist as he reached for the microphone. James's hand got to it first, and he gave Ted a look that he wanted to be the one to do it. He felt he needed to redeem himself, so Ted gave him the nod and let him take the mic.
Angie, Archie, Ashley, Bob, Emily, Jenny, Johnny, Martin, Mike, he mumbled into the microphone. That is correct. Boys steal the square.
James breathed a sigh of relief, finally feeling that he belonged on the stage. As for Veronica, she was kicking herself for forgetting to include the parents in the order. As the boys' section rejoiced, Ted caught Veronica's eye and pointed to his throat. He may have developed a soft spot for her, but that hadn't taken away his edge. The boys had dodged a bullet, and now they had two choices: either block the girls or go for the win. Of course, they went for the win.
Square B3 question. In geography, please name 5 countries in North America without including the United States, Canada, or Mexico.
A few of the boys were completely stumped, until one boy, Isaac, whispered, "Hey, what about those Caribbean islands? Aren't they part of North America, Central America too?" Ted nodded, and Isaac grabbed the mic. Let's see. There's Cuba, the Bahamas, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Colombia?
That is incorrect. Girls can steal the square.
Riley knew exactly which countries were North American and reached for the microphone to say the first 4 countries again, along with Panama, since Colombia was part of South America.
That is correct. Girls steal the square,
Mr. Gibson announced to the girls' elation. The boys' section had grown tired of the girls' loudness every single time they got a question right, as if they won the whole thing. Meanwhile, a frustrated Ted watched the square turn red, with the girls one question away from victory. "Time out!" Ted shouted as he stood up from his seat. "Wait, you're not allowed to call time out," Veronica protested. It didn't matter. Ted was already up from his seat, beckoning his team backstage as the teachers looked on confused. They hadn't thought about timeout rules, but decided to allow it and told the girls they could also huddle up to strategize. "Ugh," Ted groaned backstage. "We are really screwing up. We can't continue to be this wrong and reckless." "Dude, shut up. You act like this is the Ted Addison show, and we're just furniture," Timothy Zhang from another classroom said. "Yeah, man. It's like you want all the shine. My mama came here to see me. What, do you need to answer every question?" Bryson asked. Ted hadn't expected his teammates to push back like that. James looked at the annoyed faces of his teammates, all staring at Ted. He hoped they weren't about to lose because of team breakdown. "Guys, I'm not saying you gotta go through me for everything, but come on, we're just shooting from the hip. Whoever grabs the mic just blurts out the answer, and sometimes it's wrong. We're gonna lose this way." "You just did the same thing," Isaac said. "You just grabbed the microphone and chose C1 without talking to any of us. And we got that wrong." Well, actually, James got it wrong. James immediately felt worse again.
"Oh, like you knew it was box jellyfish,"
Ted shot back. He took a breath and relaxed his shoulders and said,
"Look, I'm not saying you can't get your moment in the sun, but can we at least make sure we have the right answer before we just blurt stuff out?"
I mean, yeah, as long as you're willing to trust us with some of the answers. We're not just planets revolving around you. We know some stuff too, Timothy said. Anytime one of us makes a mistake, we can feel your criticism.
Yeah.
A few other boys said in unison. Ted looked down as he scratched his head, realizing how he was hurting his team.
My bad, guys. I didn't know.
Doesn't matter now.
The girls are about to win. What are we going to do?
Isaac asked.
"Time's up. Back on stage, boys,"
a teacher said from behind the curtain.
We still have a chance. But if not, we've got to salvage the memory round,
Ted said as they walked back out to their table. Ted glanced at the tic-tac-toe board once again, knowing which one the girls were going to choose. Then, as he faced forward again, he caught sight of Veronica glaring at him, with her finger pointed at her throat. She was going for the kill.
Square A3. If the girls get this right, they win the trivia round. In chemistry, sodium chloride or salt is represented by what chemical formula?
The girls huddled quickly, searching for the girl that was good at chemistry. Riley offered to answer and said, "That's easy. NaCl."
Correct! Girls win the round,
Mr. Gibson announced. Again, the girls in the audience sprang out of their seats, now leading 2-0, or really 10-0, in wild cheers. One more win, and they could cement their overall victory. As the girls high-fived each other, the boys booed loudly in envy. Ted got his teammates together for a short huddle and encouraged them to do their best, and they'd live with the results. One dejected boy said,
"I really thought we'd get another chance to pull this one out."
"Can't worry about it. Short memories on the lost, long memories on the next round,"
Ted said. The teachers started resetting the tic-tac-toe board, but Riley stopped them and asked one of the girls in the audience to take a picture of the girls' team in front of the board. The girls rushed over to pose by the board, making W's with their fingers as the camera snapped. Then the teachers wheeled out a projector with a laptop and lowered the screen. It wasn't movie time, though. When the lights were dimmed, the screen showed 2 different colors, on the left and right. The 10 boys were assigned a color each, as were the girls, and then the teacher made an announcement.
For the memory round, a boy and a girl will be randomly chosen to come forward. After rock, paper, scissors, the winner will choose the square and reveal the memory challenge. However, any contestant can answer at any time. So, whoever gets the right answer first gets the square.
With that, the computer generated 2 random colors, orange and gray, Isaac and Veronica's colors. The 2 stepped forward to play rock, paper, scissors, and Veronica sized Isaac up like her prey. The fire in her eyes didn't intimidate Isaac, though, who maintained a stoic expression. Then, before they began, Veronica turned to the crowd and shouted, "Girls, we run this, mother! Girls, we run this, mother! Who runs the world? Girls! Who runs
Oh, shut up, Veronica!" Ted said, standing over the microphone at the table. "You can't sing or dance like Beyonce, so don't quit your day job."
The boys' section laughed at the jab, but the girls booed. They were all too happy to join in the song, riding high on their first 2 wins. If being a pest was your day job, you'd be the employee of the decade, Veronica said, to applause and laughs from the girls' section.
Okay, settle down, the teacher said as Veronica scowled at Ted.
After everyone calmed down again, the two contestants put their hands behind their backs. Isaac threw paper, while Veronica threw scissors. Yes! We'll start with A1 again.
A1 Math. Look at the screen. In a few moments, you'll be shown the number for pi to the 30th decimal place. You'll have 10 seconds to memorize as much as you can. The one who can remember the most digits correctly gets the square, the teacher said.
Veronica and Isaac looked at the screen intently, waiting for the number to appear. Then it was plastered in large font across the screen on 5 rows, almost too difficult to read. The two began rapidly reciting numbers under their breath. Veronica knew Isaac would try to remember the first digits, so she tried to remember the last digits and work from there since no one would know them. After all, the teacher said whoever remembered the most numbers correctly would get the square, not who remembered the most in the typical order. Then, as she reached the end, really, the beginning, the numbers disappeared, and the teacher asked them to write their numbers on a piece of paper. The two scribbled everything they could remember onto their papers, Veronica going in reverse order, since she knew the first few digits easily enough. She didn't think Isaac would be able to remember the last digits as well, though. Easy money. When they finished, they presented their papers to the teacher, who read off the numbers as pi was displayed again on the screen.
To the 30th decimal place, Isaac wrote pi as 3.1419389799318462264993219. 7 mistakes, the teacher announced. The audience gasped, not knowing whether the 7 mistakes out of 30 numbers were good or bad. To the 30th decimal place, Veronica wrote pi as 3.14193643589229684616433838279. 7 mistakes, it's a tie.
The audience murmured among themselves, wondering what the tiebreaker would be. But before the teacher could say anything, Isaac's eyebrows furrowed. Something wasn't right. As he looked at the numbers on the screen, he went to look at his paper, where the incorrect numbers were slashed out. I knew it. That wasn't a 1. That was a 7. That's how I write my 7s, see? Look at the others. The teacher who graded his paper reviewed the numbers again and covered her mouth with embarrassment. You're right. I'm so sorry, she said. 6 mistakes. Boys get the square. The boys section erupted from their seats, celebrating as if they won the whole thing. But that's what it felt like with the girls winning everything so far.
Isaac! Isaac! Isaac!
They chanted as he triumphantly walked back to his seat to high fives and back slaps. Veronica walked back to her seat and pounded the table. The 2 colors on the screen began changing rapidly as the computer randomly chose who would go next. It settled on the colors for James and Amber. The 2 nervously got up from their chairs and stepped forward. They didn't want to let on that they were interested in each other, and they didn't want that to interfere with their effort, so they tried their best to avoid eye contact. The teachers instructed them to put their hands behind their backs for rock, paper, scissors, and then they threw the same sign, rock. They put their hands behind their back again, and then threw scissors. The audience started to giggle, especially since the 2 looked embarrassed. They couldn't even look each other in the eye. A few students could see something was up. The next time, though, James threw rock while Amber threw paper. Girls pick. After consulting with her team, Amber chose the center square.
Square B2. Look at the screen. When we flip them over, this 6x6 board of cards will have word and picture pairs. Match the pictures and words. Whoever can match the most pairs before making 2 mistakes will win. Amber will be the first to try.
Let's go, Bookworm!
One girl in the audience shouted, prompting the other girls to cheer and chant.
Bookworm! 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 Amber couldn't be more embarrassed, though. Now she felt enormous pressure not to let her team down. The pictures and words then appeared on the screen and began to mix around. It would be different for James when his time came, he realized. Then after 5 seconds, the cards flipped over. Amber ran up to the screen and began selecting the matches she remembered well. First match, an aquarium. The cards flipped over to reveal Amber's first choice was right, 1 point. Second match, a tree. The cards flipped over, and again, Amber was right, 2 points. Third match, some grapes. The cards flipped over, but this time Amber was wrong. The picture was of grapes, but the word she picked was house, the first mistake. The girls' section gasped, while the boys made loud buzzer sounds. One more try. The cards flipped back over, and Amber realized she must have been 1 square off. She chose the same grapes card as before, and then selected the card beside the house. That had to be the right one, or else. The cards flipped over. The grapes were matched with the word elephant, the second mistake. The boys made loud buzzer sounds as Amber hung her head. The girls' section went silent as she walked back to the teacher's side, feeling like a failure. "You've got this, James!" a boy shouted from the crowd, naturally leading to a chant from the boys' section. "James! James! James! James!" He stepped forward to the screen and watched the cards slosh around until they were in their final place for a few seconds, and then flipped over. He pointed at the screen to reveal the first card, book. Then the second was the matching word. Easy enough, 1 point. Then he chose the first card, elephant. As it flipped over, he caught sight of Amber, who was still looking down. As he saw the disappointment on her face, he wondered what it would take to let her off the hook, like when his teammates dropped their pencils on the floor and acted silly to get him out of a jam. Even after getting a lot of other questions right, she was an outsider, just like him. If she was responsible for the girls losing, they'd never forgive her, no matter how much she contributed. James, on the other hand, had no desire to be an insider. If the boys never forgave him, he could take the heat. "This one," he said, pointing to the wrong square on purpose. The card flipped over to reveal the word aquarium. The guys moaned at the mistake, and Amber looked up, surprised. Not sure if she was delighted with his mistake or not. He turned back to the screen and continued with his plan. "This one," he said, pointing to a card in the corner. It was a carrot. He knew where the matching word was, at the bottom in the middle. But then he chose the one beside it. When it flipped over, the girls mocked James with the same buzzer sound the boys did to Amber. The boys' section fell silent, hoping they could find a way to salvage a win.
Sorry, that's 2 mistakes. Amber got 1 more match than James. So, girls, get the square.
James turned back and forth to the crowd and the screen, trying to sell that he was surprised to be wrong until he dropped his shoulders and trudged back to his seat. He spotted Amber listlessly giving 5s to her teammates. It wasn't an accomplishment for her, James could tell. Ted patted him on the back and said they'd rebound from this. As soon as James sat down, though, the lunch bell sounded, and he stood right back up. The teachers announced that they would resume right after lunch and dismissed the students to go eat. Watching from the audience, Derek worried James might be too humiliated to recover in time for the afternoon round. or worse, that the other boys would hold it against him if they got swept. He watched the girls high-five each other while the guys kind of just slinked off the stage as if licking their wounds. As the students walked downstairs to lunch, one boy passed James and grabbed his throat as if he was choking, making a couple other boys laugh. Another boy, though, was angry at James and said, "I could have matched 4 of those at least." James felt terrible because he also could have matched 4 and won the square for the boys. But Amber seemed more important, at least at the time. His teammates bailed him out when the first match began, and he turned on them.
"Hey, why don't you try getting up on that stage in front of hundreds of people? Let's see how you do," Ted said to the boy. "Come on, James. You're doing more for us than these dudes sitting in the stands."
He and Derek led James into the lunchroom, where they were met with boos from the boys. They froze in their tracks and turned around to head back to the hallway. It was unreal, yet one couldn't be too upset with the boys' reactions. They expected the so-called genius to have carried the boys further in an academic competition. It was already an upset that threatened to become a full-on rout. "How do you like that A-game, Addison?" Veronica taunted as she and her teammates strode past them into the lunchroom, where they were met with cheers from the girls. Amber straggled behind, deliberately avoiding eye contact with James as she, too, walked into the lunchroom to loud cheers. James couldn't figure out why she wouldn't even look at him. Ted and Derek noticed. After a moment of letting a group of other students into the lunchroom, the boys started to head back in, but then Ted stopped them.
"We need to talk. Somewhere private."
He led the boys to the vestibule by the exit and said,
"I don't know how to say this, James, but I think Derek should take your place this afternoon." "What? Why?" James asked. "Listen, I understand why you did it, but you threw the competition so Amber could get that square."
Derek's jaw dropped as he tried to look at James's face to see if Ted's accusation was true.
"What does through mean?" James asked, trying to buy time to think of an excuse.
But he knew exactly what it meant and wished he could somehow avoid a firestorm, if not amongst all the boys, then at least just amongst his friends.
"You got the answer wrong on purpose so Amber wouldn't lose. Like I said, I understand why you did it, but how can I trust you to give it your all this afternoon? I think you should step aside and let Derek take over."
Derek, still studying James's face, asked,
"You didn't really do it, did you? Tell me this isn't true."
James closed his eyes and nodded slowly.
"And all this for a girl who won't even look at him now," Ted said. "I had to do it. She made a mistake too early, and the girls were not going to accept her. I know this. That is why I did this. If she did not make that mistake, I would not have made mine, but she did. I had to protect her. The same way your teammates protected you before you turned on them," Derek shot back.
James didn't know how to answer the accusation. He only knew that he thought he did the right thing at the time.
"Maybe winning this competition is not as important to me as it is to you. You seem to want to humble the girls, but to me, this feels so meaningless. Amber is the first girl that ever liked me." "James, she wouldn't even look at you as she walked past," Ted said. "I warned you. I told you this might have been a trap. Maybe she was faking this whole time so that you'd do something like, 'Well, maybe that is okay,'" James shouted, a tear trickling from his eye. He turned his face away from his friends and wiped his eyes as he sniffled. The situation was humiliating enough as it is. He just wished his friends could recognize what he was dealing with.
Ted and Derek looked at each other, trying to think of what to say. Where was this all coming from?
I wish you never told us it was a trap, Ted. At least then I could have enjoyed my weekend in peace. Instead, I could not talk with her without worrying that she was going to betray me. If she was going to betray me, fine. I would have still... But it still would have... Stop, Ted, Derek said, putting a hand on his shoulder. I'm guessing a fake girlfriend for 2 days is better than none at all. Ever. I'm guessing that's what James is saying. But how does that make any sense? Ted protested. It doesn't. But it does at the same time. It doesn't, but it does at the same... What? Derek, do you hear yourself?
Ted turned around frustrated. He pulled out his hair and started pacing around, trying to wrap his mind around why James would so willingly throw the match for a girl who might have been lying the whole time. As he was pacing, though, he saw Amber coming out of the bathroom.
Perfect. We can get answers right now. It's time to put this to bed.
Ted called out to Amber in the hallway, saying he had some questions for her. She, of course, felt nervous seeing the expression on his face as he marched up to her. The other boys soon followed, with Amber still not looking James in the eye.
So, James just confessed he flubbed that memory question on purpose so you could get that square. You didn't ask him to do that, did you?
What? Of course not. I didn't know he did that. Really, James? James nodded and said,
I had to protect you from... When we walked into the lunchroom, we were booed. I did not want that to happen to you.
But, James, I don't need you to...
Wait, I've got a question, Derek interrupted. All this weekend, we were wondering if Veronica was behind this. Did she put you up to this?
Up to what?
Derek groaned and said, Fine, I'll break it down. Did she ask you to tell James you liked him? Yes or no?
Amber started, finally looking James in the eye, then looking back and forth between Ted and Derek. As she stammered, she knew she had to tell them the truth, but struggled to find the words. James had a sinking feeling, knowing what her answer was going to be. Can I explain? She asked. It's really not as...
So it was a trap!
Derek shouted.
You set him up so he'd take the fall for you, so you could win? You toyed with him? Ted said.
No, really, it's not like that at all, she said. James, you've got to believe me. James stood there, shell-shocked. All his worries were coming true as he flashed back to just 3 days ago, when she was staring at him across the aisle. He quietly said,
When did she ask you to do what you did? Before, during, or after lunch last Friday?
She looked down and answered, During. But I promise you, it's not what you think it is.
Everybody says that when they get caught, Ted broke in. She put you up to this, and you did it. And he just tried to throw the match because he liked you. And for what? For you to say it was all a game?
James turned away and started walking slowly to the boys' bathroom.
You were right all this time, Ted. Derek, would you take my place?
He ducked into the bathroom, knowing he'd break down the moment the door closed behind him. He didn't want to lose it right in front of them. Amber didn't know what to say. Before she could think to tell him the full story, he was already in the bathroom, and moments later sobbing. Ted followed him into the bathroom to try to comfort him, while Amber tried to go up to the door to talk to James. But before she could get to the door, Derek got in her way and told her to get lost.
You're a disgrace, bookworm. Just get out of here. You've already done enough.
But I promise, it isn't what it looks like. I can explain. Really, Amber said as she herself started to cry.
Oh, just save your crocodile tears and get out of here.